Business Matters. The title suggests many things. The important issue is the world revolves around business, society, organizations, individuals, and even religion survives and thrives because of business. Business has to encompass not just financial commodity and service transactions. It has also to include welfare, justice, empowerment, environmental, and other issues too. Every week, Business Matters will delve into aspects of business that impact our lives. We will seek out extraordinary and ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. Facilitators, educators, and entrepreneurs will be invited to inspire and enlighten our listeners. Join Anwar Mullah for an interactive show and find out what really matters in business.
نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Tuesday night, 8:37, you on the Business Matters program on Radio Al Ansar with me, Anwar Mullah, and my co-host in the studio, Imran Mullah. Imran, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, we've been away from the studio for the better part of a month, maybe slightly longer. And what a month it's been, Imran. Very, very eventful in our lives. Top of the list. Extremely. Top of the list being the loss of my dear mum.
Allah grant her Jannah, inshallah.
I mean, she died with COVID, and Imran and I both were infected with COVID. I ended up with a COVID pneumonia, so we've been off air for the last few weeks. But alhamdulillah, Allah is most merciful, and we over that ordeal, and we back in the studio. I think I've become quite an expert on COVID and COVID-related matters.
Sometimes when I hear you speak in the terminology, I think I should just call you doctor.
Okay. Yep, we've learned a lot as we went along, and we had to, as we were being treated by expert doctors and also being given a lot of home herbal treatment, all of which helped, and alhamdulillah, we've kind of lived to tell the tale.
Actually, something amazing that I only realized once I contracted COVID is the amount of free work that our Muslim doctors are doing in the community to help patients with COVID, be it via home visits or nurses going home to take bloods, the handing out of medication. It's a phenomenal work by our doctors, nurses, physiotherapists in the community, and Allah bless them with barakah in all that they do.
I was absolutely blown away with the support structure that's available in the community, the number of medics that are giving off their free time and basically treating patients, and also not only that, providing medication and also free medication. It was absolutely amazing. I mean, Allah bless all of these people with the best of this world and the hereafter.
Ameen.
Okay, let's get on with our show really tonight, and we have an exciting guest. He is Dr. Shahim Patel, and he's from the Regent Business School. And tonight we're going to be unpacking the topic of leadership versus micromanagement. So, Shahim, welcome to Radio Al Ansar.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm really excited and looking forward to our discussion today. But before I actually go further, I just want to share the du'as that's being made for your late mum, as well as for the two of you and everybody else across the airwaves that are struggling with COVID-19 and those who have lost loved ones as well. I think it's important for us to just take a second and remember everybody that is suffering. But in general, jazakallah for the warm welcome. I'm really looking forward to everything.
Shahim, before we talk about the topic as such, we want to know a little bit about you yourself as in terms of, we know you're part of Regent Business School, but take us back a little bit into your upbringing and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Okay. I'm from Johannesburg. I live in Johannesburg. I've been here all my life. I've got a lot of experience in terms of leading as a student, student organizations, MSA and so forth. And then coupled with that academic experience, I've gone through a number of different qualifications. The most recent of which, or the most highest of which, is a PhD in leadership. And that's really where the academic side of things have culminated. I'm still studying. I'm a lifelong student, as many people like to think of me. I'm currently doing an LLB. I'm about halfway through.
Wow.
And then from a professional point of view, I've worked in banking and management consulting for the most part of my career. And in parallel with sort of that full-time gig, I've been doing lecturing and supervising from an academic point of view for the last 7 or 8 years. And then earlier this year, I made the decision to join Regent Business School on a full-time basis. My job there is just beyond the normal academics of lecturing and so forth. I also manage the MBA program at Regent, and
Wow.
we're trying to implement some really cutting edge technology and bringing that into the curriculum, which is something that I think a lot of institutions have tried to do and haven't necessarily got to those outcomes. But I think that's very exciting for us at Regent because we feel we're making the right strides and we're on the right track. So inshallah, with the right guidance and with the right amount of effort, we should reach those goals, inshallah.
Yes, talking of Regent, I mean, obviously there's an association with Regent and the Mancosa, and we remember fondly the late Yusuf Karoja. What an amazing gentleman he was, and Allah took him away too soon, I would say. But he taught me as a student at Orient. He was an English teacher, and to think that he came from that, a humble English teacher at Orient, to a person who was heading up a multi-billion rand organization as the head of Mancosa. What an amazing achievement in maybe 20 short years.
Yeah, that's true. I think, it's just such a shining light, an example of what is possible. I think, especially when you consider South Africa's history and, opportunities were not always available to people during apartheid as what they might be today. And we've got to ask ourselves some serious questions. Are we capitalizing on the opportunities that are available to us today? Because when we look at examples from yesteryear and we look at the lack of opportunity, but yet the outcomes were still amazing. And I think it's something that we can all take a lesson from. And it's inspiration for all of us that if we put our minds to anything, we can achieve. So yeah, and you're right. There is a sort of a connection between Regent Business School and Mancosa in the sense that they are both part of the Honoris Universitas structure, which is a Pan-African organization which holds a number of educational institutions across Africa, and Regent and Mancosa form part of that.
Absolutely. I think it boils down to a few things, but the one thing that really stood out with the late Yusuf Karoja was his confidence. He always had this ability to believe in himself, and that goes as part of what we're discussing tonight, where we talk about leadership, that one has to have the confidence.
Correct. And, confidence is a subset of something broader, which is, it's about self-respect in many ways. How does one value oneself? And the more you value yourself, the more likely you are to be confident. And it's well and good to have people who are confident and able to speak well and who are able to present themselves in a particular manner, and it brings people towards them. But then you also need to back that up with something of substance. You have to have something that is of value sitting behind the confidence. And I think truly great people are the ones who have both. You're able to talk and not only talk, I think maybe communicate is a better term. Right. Because you can also communicate without words. Just your presence sometimes exudes self-confidence. And when you, like I say, back that up with substance, with a track record, with delivery, a history of delivery in your particular field, I think then you really are well placed to go down in history as an example, as a leader, as somebody who will be remembered beyond your death.
Okay. Let's get straight into our topic now. And I mean, you can talk on many topics, I'm sure, but we've chosen tonight the concept of micromanagement versus leadership. What do we mean by micromanagement versus leadership?
I think, one of the words that I always associate with micromanagement is trust. And if you really think about it, micromanagement, if you really want to go to a definition, micro means small and management means ensuring that certain resources are looked after. And so it's at a granular level, it's at a very low level of detail that you're looking after resources. And what are your resources? Your resources could be people, it could be finances, it could be time. There's a whole bunch of things that you can consider trying to manage. And like I say, it's at a very low level. And for many people, especially when you are the one being micromanaged, It can be very irritating, it can be very unsettling, and it can actually turn you into somebody that you ordinarily not have been. When you contrast that with leadership, so many definitions of leadership are out there. And I don't think of any of them as wrong or right. I think that you can only define leadership correctly for a particular context or a particular environment. But for me, one of the most fundamental issues in leadership is the knowledge of oneself. So if you understand yourself as a human being and you are quite comfortable with who you are, and you understand that you are not perfect, you understand that you come with strengths and weaknesses, but you actually are not trying to hide that from the world. You're authentically representing yourself to everybody in your surroundings. I think that for me is a hallmark of a good leader. And so now you're kind of trying to balance the two of these issues, right? You've got, on the one hand, leadership, which is, like I say, very much to do with the comfort of oneself. You can even talk about the confidence you alluded to earlier. And on the other hand, you've got this thing where you're trying to manage something at a very low level, and it comes with its own set of pros and cons. But in essence, that's the contrast between leadership and micromanagement. And I think, we will probably unpack it a lot further as we go forward in the discussion. But I think I want to just point out at this point in time that micromanagement is often seen as absolutely wrong or absolutely bad. And I don't think that that's always the case. I think there's an argument in particular circumstances where micromanagement might actually be necessary. But like I said, we can always unpack that as we go through the conversation.
Shahim, a very good introduction into leadership versus micromanagement. In the modern workplace, what is the leadership style or management style that is advised?
Again, context-specific and environment-specific aside, if we look at some of the generic sort of options available to leaders and managers out there, I think what we found in a lot of instances with businesses of big and small sizes is that when you emphasize the purpose of your organization, whether it be a business, an NGO, a government organization, it really doesn't matter. But if you are able to articulate what is the purpose of our existence, why are we here, then you'll probably find that in modern times, and we use modern times very synonymously with COVID-19, you emphasize the value of what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it, i.e. the purpose. You're probably well placed to achieve some serious outcomes, to really see some tangible outcomes that is beneficial not only to the organization, but to its people as well as society at large. So I think that's the first one. The second big thing that I think should be at play in a modern organization is the management or the allocation of resources, which is different to what we'd normally be experiencing prior to COVID-19. So when I say the resources, again, I gave some examples earlier, right? It could be human resources, it could be financial resources, it could be time. And really, how do we bring that down to a level that is actually practical? How do we actually discuss management of resources or allocation of resources in a practical sense? So I'll give you an example, right? In a modern sense, so many people work from home. And it's in industries where 3 years ago, nobody would have thought that it's possible to work from home in that particular instance or in that particular industry. And all of a sudden, the whole industry is working from home. So how do we then say we're bringing our IT infrastructure out of a physical building somewhere in Johannesburg or in Durban or wherever else, and we're bringing it into people's homes? We really are decentralizing our resources. And how do we ensure that we still maintain the levels of productivity that is needed to achieve our outcomes and to achieve our purpose? So that's another one. It's really about the resources within an organization. And like you said, there's so many you can talk about, and I don't want to labor the point too much, but I think one more that's very important is to really relinquish control in many instances. And I don't mean abandoning control, but I say relinquish control in the sense of saying that if you are going to have a modern organization that is decentralized, people are working from home, you need to build trust. And the only way to build trust is to relinquish control and say, guys, you work in this team, you're part of the bigger organization, you know your responsibilities, but I trust that you're going to get the job done in a way that works for you. Not in a way that works for me as the leader, but in a way that works for you as the person that's part of the team. And you may have leadership capacity in your own right, which is why we're going to be trusting you. So I think that for me summarizes in a very basic sense what some of the key features are for a modern organization.
Yes, Shahim, obviously COVID has changed the world as we know it. I mean, I was speaking to one of the partners at one of the big four accounting firms in South Africa this afternoon, and I was quite taken aback when the guy said to me that I haven't been into my office from March last year till now. We're starting to get back into the office in the next few weeks, and infection rates are down or whatever. But for the better part of 18 months, here's one of the big four accounting firms, and they're saying literally nobody's been at the office for that period of time. So nobody would have dreamt of this if you went back 2.5 years that something like this could have actually happened.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I think if you just run with the same example, right?
Yeah.
At a partner level, you certainly have leadership capability and leadership qualities, because you would not have made partner had you not had those capabilities, right? And if we now take it a step further, even as a partner who may have been there for some time, they would have received no training to prepare those partners for the 18 months that we've just been through. And so if you don't have any training, you're kind of relying on this instinct to do things well, but there's no real way of measuring if I am doing it well. I may ask for some feedback. Is the feedback honest? I'm not sure. There's so much of uncertainty that goes with it, even for someone in a senior position or in a leadership position like a partner. And from there, you can only imagine the amount of anxiety and the amount of uncertainty for people that actually form part of such a partner structure. So people who actually report to that person, right? If the partner is experiencing uncertainty and flux, then you can only imagine that it's double and triple fold as you go lower down the so-called food chain, which is not necessarily a great term, but it gives you an idea of the hierarchy of sorts if you use an older terminology.
And if we, following on with that example, if, for example, if we look at a micromanagement sort of philosophy versus a leadership philosophy, in the past 18 months, if you used to be a micromanager, what would have been the consequences of that for you versus if you were a leader?
Yeah, so I think that although we almost instinctively gravitate towards COVID-19 as a complete game changer, and it has been a game changer, we also need to sort of rewind a bit before COVID-19 and just remember what society was like back then. Already at that point, there were a number of forces that were almost kind of, if I say forces, forcing the micromanagers to change behavior. If you look at things like social media, if you look at things like freedoms in certain countries, South Africa being one of them, society was changing in a way that was allowing people to be themselves in their personal capacity. So you had rights, you could do whatever you like as long as it's within the confines of the law. You could post whatever you want to on social media. You could order your food and your Uber in instant time. And the only real part of life that was not necessarily changing at the same pace was the workplace. But it was changing. Even though it wasn't the same pace, it was still changing. And so micromanagers were already finding it very uncomfortable before COVID-19. And all of a sudden, this pandemic hit. And if you are a micromanager and you found yourself, thrown into this pandemic, you would have found yourself almost drowning in a very deep sea or deep ocean. And you typically, from what I've seen, a lot of these micromanagers have given off the impression that they've relinquished control in such a great way, almost because they want to now overcompensate for their shortcomings of unnecessarily micromanaging in the past. And I'm using the term unnecessarily because I'm reinforcing the point that I made right at the beginning. Micromanagement in itself is not always a bad thing. But when it's unnecessary, where there are alternatives to micromanagement, and yet you as a leader still choose to employ micromanagement as a tool to control people, then there's a problem. And like I say, that problem just becomes all the more magnified through the lens of a COVID-19 pandemic, because you now have to kind of mask or hide that so-called bad behavior of micromanaging.
And many managers used the reason of accountability for micromanagement. So how can accountability still be achieved without the consequences that come with micromanagement? Okay,
so I think from an accountability point of view, it's fair. I don't have anything against a leader saying that, you know what, I'm managing and I'm leading in a particular manner because I need to ensure that there's a sense of accountability and a culture of accountability within the organization. That's fine. But accountability by its very nature is a very closely linked thing to outcomes, not to a process. So as long as outcomes are being achieved, it really shouldn't matter what the process was to actually achieve the outcome. Again, assuming that, you know, the laws of the country have not been broken, the laws of a company have not been broken, and so forth, the process should be fine. And most micromanagement takes place at the level of a process. So if I give my staff member a particular task, and I say, listen, can you please deliver the goods to point X? And all of a sudden, I want to know, what time are you leaving? Which route are you taking? Where are you stopping for a break? Who are you picking up on the way? Let me see your GPS logs. You know, there's a whole lot of things that I'm trying to find out, which really I should just be focusing on the outcome. Did the goods reach in a good order, timelessly? Were there no real, breakages of, like I say, governance or laws and so forth? That should suffice. Those are guardrails in place that will allow just general management, not micromanagement. And I'm using a really silly example about delivering goods from point A to point B. But you can really apply that same thinking about general management versus micromanagement to any context. And in no context can any argument ever be made that says abandon management altogether. It's not about abandoning management. It's about trying to relinquish control to the point of saying, I am not micromanaging unless the situation demands, which again I'm reinforcing, but unless the situation demands, I'm not going to go and find out every little step of the way, where are you with this project? Where are you with the delivery of the goods? Where are you with the particular update on the finances? And so forth and so forth. So you can still get accountability if you focus on the outcomes. And then one may ask the question, how do I get those general sort of management guardrails to be looked after? We live in the age of technology, and we find more often than not, increasingly, open source software, which you don't pay a cent for, which will allow you to set up those guardrails and say, listen, if my team breaks these rules 1, 2, and 3, give me an alert. And the manager or the leader will be able to see in real time that, listen, something's gone wrong, I need to take action. But you don't even have to actively manage, because a lot of the software today allows you to manage in real time, but still retrospectively or retroactively. And so I think that the argument around accountability is becoming increasingly flimsy in the context of managing by outcomes and in the context of technology.
Absolutely. One should trust that the people they have hired to do a particular job are actually worth what they're doing and know what they're doing.
Shahim, we're going to stop for the 9 o'clock news, but I want to leave you with a thought that maybe we can follow up on after that, which is, I think sometimes the micromanagement is brought in when there's a fear on the part of the leader or the manager that he is fearful of one of those people that he's actually micromanaging taking over or usurping his role at the firm. And that's why sometimes this really to make sure that he has something on the people under him so that he's never his job is not threatened. Let's put it that way. Maybe a thought that we can follow up on after the news.
Certainly.
We are unity, and you are listening to Radio Al Ansar.
Business Matters.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. If you've just joined us, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're on the Business Matters program with me, Anwar Mullah, and with me in the studio also, Imran Mullah, and we back as normal after a break of about 4 weeks. And we've been discussing the concept of leadership versus micromanagement with our esteemed guest, Dr. Shahim Patel from the Regent Business School. Shahim, welcome back. When we left off, we left with this idea of saying, well, perhaps sometimes micromanagement is done for the wrong reasons, where people are a bit threatened by the people that they are micromanaging, and for that reason they kind of go a little bit overboard. Your thoughts on that?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think, I've had some time to reflect on what your idea was, right? And I think the thing that most stands out for me is the issue of ethics. And that is such a fundamental of good leadership, especially in modern times. And so if somebody's out there, micromanaging as a means of keeping somebody down, not allowing them to grow because, they might outshine me as the leader. So it's in my interest to kind of just keep this person down, frustrate them, interfere with the ways that they work, make sure that nobody's able to see anything good coming out of this person because I am actually insecure on my own side. And that's the thing. If you lead from a point of insecurity, you really are treading the line of unethical leadership and unethical behavior. And I think that the question needs to be taken back a step. How was this person actually appointed to a leadership position in the first place? Who were the people involved in that decision and what was the process that was followed? Because if that process was flawed, then it's likely that this kind of person may have found himself in a leadership position. But if that process was sound, and if that process didn't have any major gaps, it would have found this person out before they were able to make someone else's life a misery. Their shortcomings and their insecurities and their inability to lead ethically would have been found out before they were appointed to a position of leadership. And then you also have the other side of it where, the person wasn't appointed to the leadership position. They were just put there by virtue of the fact that you may be the owner of a company, you may be, inheriting a company. It often happens in multi-generational businesses, which we're seeing a lot in our community. So, the old guard typically led with the utmost of integrity. And all of a sudden, there's a new generation that's almost brought into a business rather than actually groomed to take up a leadership role. And now you find that this person is wholly unable or incapable of leading effectively. They start to engage in this kind of behavior. And so, like I say, it's just a case of taking a step back, looking at how this person actually found themselves in that position. And it might tell you a story. It might not solve the problem, but it might tell you a story. And the more information you have at your disposal, especially when you're the person on the receiving end of this kind of behavior, the more well-placed you are to make informed decisions. So what does that mean? My decision might be to report this person to his or her superior and understand the consequence of doing that. My other option might be, to leave the organization because I just feel like I'm being kept, I'm being kept down. Nobody's allowing me to grow or to shine. And again, there's consequences associated with that. Irrespective of the choice that you make and the route that you take, as long as you've got a more, sort of wide-angled view of what the situation is like, the better you are to make the right decision.
Okay, you on the Business Matters program brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce. And if anybody wants to phone in and direct some questions to Dr. Shahim Patel, the number in the studio 0861904904. And if you want to send us a WhatsApp, it's 060-904-1056. Dr. Patel, how has the workplace evolved in recent times and what strategy of management will be advised?
There's no real one-size-fits-all, but we can always discuss generic solutions or approaches to managing in modern times. And like I said before, modern times is so synonymous with COVID-19. I think if you even look a bit closer in South Africa, we've had instances of political unrest and looting, which also forms part of sort of the modern era of managing different kinds of organizations. And for me, I will always return to the issue of what is the purpose of the organization. And if that is communicated and permeated throughout all levels of an organization, irrespective of if it's in the private sector or public sector, that purpose and that vision and that whole thing that we often tend to overlook as leaders, especially when you've got a hectic schedule and you really can't always keep that broader, wider, context front of mind. I think the leaders who actually manage to do that, who manage to keep those things front of mind, are the ones who are doing well in the modern era of management. Those are the leaders that are actually shaping the future, and they are the ones who are going to dictate or to model the world that we live in tomorrow. So it would be so unwise to ignore these things, especially for people who don't gravitate towards those things naturally. So you find a lot of people who don't like to, refer to a broader picture, and they think of things like, I hear so often people use the term airy-fairy stuff, like vision and purpose and goals and so forth, right? And they say, I'm the kind of guy, I get my hands dirty. Don't tell me about all that stuff. I'm the one who sorts things out. When you got a problem, you phone me. You know what? We need people like that. We need people who are prepared to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. That's fine. But if you are able to just pull yourself out of that for a second and look at things from a more, if you want to call it philosophical point of view, or from a more, theoretical point of view, and focus on things like vision and purpose and so forth, you'll actually find that magic starts happening in the organization in a way that you can't explain. Purely because of the fact that you now subconsciously, whether that's in a neurological sense or just the energy that you're putting into your work, the world tends to now sort of, reward that kind of effort. And you find that things are moving in a way that you normally would not have been able to control, even if you are the kind of person that gets your hands dirty. So that's the one thing in terms of what organizations can do. I think the other big thing that we can do, very practically, we really need to focus on the issue of mental well-being. Not only from ourselves as leaders and how do we look at our mental well-being, but we also need to make sure that the mental well-being of those in our care and those in our charge is also being looked after. And there are so many ways of doing that. Again, practically speaking, I spoke some time back about this idea of the unboxing movement. The unboxing movement is if you go into YouTube or you go into any online source and you just type in unboxing, you'll find people unbox, meaning opening a box of practically anything. You'll find people unboxing cell phones and laptops and a whole range of other things. But what's happened now is people have taken that idea of unboxing and actually solved the mental well-being problem in the workplace. So people are working from home, they're divorced from the team environment and the normal culture of the organization. So the leader says, okay, I'm going to send to each person's home a little gift in a box, and I'm going to say, please unbox this. And you can video it if you really want to, and you can post it online, and you can talk through the idea of what you're unboxing. But it's very personal to the person. It's very unexpected to the person receiving. And what happens then is, in a modern organization, when you are able to delight your staff, you are then, as an organization, so well placed to delight your customer. And if you can delight your customer, you really and truly have solved the problem about leading in a modern era organization.
Okay, I'd say a happy workplace or a happy work place is when you have happy staff. So you alluded to that. Okay. Something that you spoke about earlier, which I thought was very pertinent, is the concept of generation inheritance of a business. So these people are put into leadership positions not because they've earned it, but simply because it's my father's business and it's been passed on to me. And perhaps we see failings in the community, and we talk about the 3-generation scenario of businesses that fail in the 3rd generation. And perhaps herein lies the secret, is that one maybe needs to put in a management structure that really is made up of people from outside of the family structure, etc., and rather let the best people do the best job, rather than having a person in there who's simply there because he happens to be the son or the grandson of the person who started the business.
Yeah, I agree fully with the sentiment that says, some kind of deliberate approach is required. When you're looking at businesses from the point of view of generational, let's call it succession, you have to be deliberate about your approach. And when I say deliberate, I'm saying there has to be a plan in place. That plan can be different for each family business, and that's fine. As long as the plan is in place and the plan is being constantly monitored as time goes on. Because people change, not only from the younger generation, people are changing, but people in the older generation are also changing. And you need to be flexible in your approach and say, listen, if I've got a business that, it's been around for 20 years and it's built up to a particular level where it really is in a thriving position, I want to make sure that my children and my grandchildren don't kind of, drop the ball. I'm going to say that my plan might be that I'm going to educate my first generation children on how to take over the business one day. That could be learning on the job, like I'm literally taking you to the business or the place where the business operates on a daily or weekly basis. I'm exposing you to different functions of the organization. I'm letting you understand supply chain and staff issues and so forth. That's great. But you also then need to supplement it with some kind of a formal education as well, because that gives you the structure and the rigor that is required to lead in a modern organization. And so that's your plan A, that says I'm going to use education as the tool to drive the future success of my multi-generational business for the generations to come, with a lot of flexibility built in. And to your point that you made, it might mean that my kids or my grandkids actually need to be followers in the organization. I'm not necessarily kicking them out. They might still have shares in the business or in the organization. That's fine. But the actual senior management or executive management of the organization might need to be, let's call it, outsourced to somebody who's not part of the family, because they have the things like formal education, on the job training, experience, and a history and a track record of delivery that is relative or is comparable to the organization that I built with my blood, sweat, and tears over 20 odd years.
If we go back to leadership and grooming people for leadership, are the skills of leadership learned via theory, or is it more practical?
Yeah, so, I often reflect on something that somebody taught me when I just started my studies in leadership. And it's a quote which is attributed to Umar radiallahu anhu. And he says very simply, you should never desire leadership. And just there's so much to learn from that small statement that says you should not desire leadership. This is coming from one of the greatest leaders who have ever lived after the Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam. This is somebody who has really and truly made a mark on the world until the day of Qiyamah. And why would he say something like that? He's got such a track record of leading correctly and justly, and yet he'd make a statement like that. And for me, it connects exactly to the question of, do you build leaders or are they born? The thing is, you can think of yourself as a born leader. I've got no issue with that. But until and unless somebody has actually put in place some kind of an environment or some kind of a container for you as a born leader to actually lead in the best way possible, you'll never quite reach the full heights that you would have otherwise. And so for me, it has to be a case of both. You have to go on a leadership journey of your own where you make mistakes and you learn and you try things and you actually, like I say, you're not afraid to get things wrong in a particular context, whether that be in a business or in some other organization. It could even be in your own personal life. So there's that element of what I like to call organic leadership, which things just happen. And you kind of being as deliberate as possible, but your outcomes are always kind of limited, or rather your outcomes are always restricted to the realities of the way that the world works. And then you've got the formal education or the skills that you get by being taught leadership. And I think that especially we speak about the modern organization, there are so many unknowns and so many variables. It would be reckless to lead without some kind of formal training that has rigor built into it, that has some kind of a measurable outcome that says, these are what you actually need to be doing to be an effective leader. These are the pitfalls and the blind spots you need to be avoiding, because you as a person might not realize that these blind spots that you have are actually having a detrimental outcome on the people that are involved in the organization. It's having a detrimental outcome on the business or the organization that you are leading. And so really, that formalized education of leadership for me is vital. I think it almost in many ways precedes the organic leadership journey, because, so many people are afraid to enter that organic leadership journey and just go and get their hands dirty, try a leadership position, get it right, get it wrong, and so forth. I think that starting point should be some kind of formal education of leadership. In terms of
a business, how can a business empower management to be better leaders and achieve the productivity that's required?
Yeah, I think we mentioned the word trust earlier in our conversation. Right? Yeah. And we also mentioned, or we alluded to, the relinquishing of control. So a lot of great leaders actually just get out of the way. so much of leadership is just to not frustrate people in the work that they're doing. And when I say frustrate, I don't mean in the sense of I'm frustrated. I'm saying frustrating in the sense of asking too many questions, putting too many checkpoints in place, thinking that that's what makes a good leader. Sometimes you just need to remove yourself out of the way, and what people refer to as servant leadership. So what does servant leadership imply? It says that I'm going to trust you to do the job. This is what we are looking for. We require outcome X, Y, and Z. We need it by date A, B, and C. I'm going to move out of your way. When you've got an issue, when you need help, this is where you come to. I'll make sure that whatever is standing in your way or whatever is blocking you from achieving A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z, I'll remove those from your path. And that's what really servant leadership is about. And in doing so, you are actually empowering your management team to actually become more productive. Things like mental health becomes less of an issue now. Things like physical health becomes less of an issue. We find that employee morale starts to spike and to peak because people are actually excited by the fact that I'm being trusted. They're excited by the fact that I'm achieving my outcomes, all because I've removed myself out of the way. And again, I'm going to stress that approach won't always be applicable. You can't always just move out of the way and just trust that things will happen, and if you've got a problem, come to me. So many organizations, especially the ones that are run in so-called old school fashion, those ones will battle to move out of the way. And so you need to have some kind of other plan. But again, the word is deliberate, right? So what is your plan? If you're saying to me that servant leadership is not going to work for you because, that's what I learned business the old school way, and I'm from the old school of making sure people don't mess around at the job and so forth, that's fine. But then you need to say, what is your plan? And let it be a deliberate plan. Let it be a plan that is communicated. Don't let the plan sit in your head and you think you've got it all figured out because you've got so many years of experience, but you're not sharing the plan with the people you're leading and saying, guys, I'm not going to move out of your way. These are the reasons why I'm not moving out of your way. But when I am here, this is what you can expect out of me. This is the benefit to you so that you actually do well, so that you actually still achieve the outcomes for the organization. But I think so much of that would depend on proper, wholesome, sound communication and making sure that nobody is under the misunderstanding or the illusion that I'm still trying to be leading from a place of ego. I'm the leader, so I will not let you through. You will not pass begin and you will not collect 200 rand. I think that if you want to remove a lot of the sort of barriers to achieving goals, then that kind of ego needs to be removed.
Excellent response, and I think very pertinent. Dr. Shahim Patel, we have reached the end of the program. Any closing advice to business owners or management professionals?
Yeah, I do actually. Trust the process and trust the people that are involved in your organization. You'll be surprised at the magic people produce. Really and truly, even if you've seen bad behavior in the past, put it to one side. Start fresh. Start a clean slate and give people a second chance and a third and a fourth chance to produce. Because I'm telling you, everybody has the capacity to produce. Everybody has the desire to produce. Even lazy people or so-called lazy people have the capacity to produce. It's up to you as a leader to make sure that the environment allows people to produce. So that's point number one. I think point number two, you have to get to know yourself and understand that the person I was yesterday is not the same person that I am today, and the person that I am tomorrow will not be the same that I am today. So understand that because I'm a dynamic individual, I need to, if I think I know myself, tomorrow I have to start from scratch. I don't know myself anymore. I need to really and truly observe my mood. I need to observe my energy levels. I need to observe my, my connection with a whole a range of things, including, as Muslims we know, what is your connection spiritually? How are you feeling spiritually? How does that actually play a role in my ability to lead? So your understanding of yourself in the context of you being dynamic and changing all the time, I think that will also aid you in leading in a more, let's say, wholesome way in any organization that you might be in.
Excellent closing remarks. Dr. Shahim Patel, it's indeed been a pleasure having you on the program. I'm going to extend an open invitation to you. If you're ever in Durban on a Tuesday evening, please do let us know. We would love to get you into the Al Ansar studios and do a live show with you. You're a wealth of information, and I think we haven't even scratched the surface. So thank you so much for sharing those thoughts of yours with us. It's really been an eye-opener, and as I said, we hope to get you into the studio at some stage. Imran, your closing remarks?
Shukran, Dr. Patel, for joining us this evening. As my dad has commented, a wealth of knowledge, extremely well spoken, and we really appreciate you taking the time of your Tuesday night to join us. I completely share the sentiment. Sometimes micromanagement is required, but on the whole, you should be a greater leader and a servant leader at that. Let the people that you have hired to do the job run with it and get on with it.
Jazakallah to both of you. You've made the conversation so easy to flow and so easy for me to share my ideas freely. I really appreciate the invitation, and inshallah I will take you up with it when I am in Durban. It would be a pleasure to come and meet you in person and to have a deeper discussion, or perhaps even a more broader discussion in person and in studio. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity as well. And inshallah, all of the best going forward. We will meet soon, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair. With that, it's us signing off on this Tuesday evening. Inshallah, we'll be with you next Tuesday on another Business Matters program. With that, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.